Welcome to Black Talk Radio News. My name is Scotty Reed, and I have on the line with me H.A. Goodman, a columnist and author who is the publisher of counterpropa.com. Thank you for joining us today, H.A.
Thank you so much, Scotty. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you.
First, let me thank you for your unbiased news coverage of the Democratic primaries, the 2016 elections, and your ongoing coverage of what is happening in Washington, D.C. I think that objective journalists are very important these days, considering what we're seeing in the so-called mainstream.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Today, I would like to discuss with you the resurgence of McCarthyism in the United States. What do you make of it?
Well, this is what I believe is taking place. Hillary Clinton raised $1.2 billion. So $1.2 billion, that's a lot of high-level donors who lost all their money. Trump spent $600 million, so she outspent Trump 2-1. Then, when you look at Bernie Sanders, he only raised $200 million, but he didn't do that with giant super PACs and corporate money. So Hillary Clinton lost all that money, $1.2 billion. They need to blame, so they can't simply say she was a horrible candidate who cheated Bernie. They have to say that they're saying now the Russians did it. But before Russia, it was the Electoral College, it was sexism, it was Bernie Bros, it was fake news, it was every other, James Comey, the FBI letter. So what they're doing, instead of saying, we cheated, the only candidate who could have easily defeated Trump, Bernie would have destroyed Trump and the Electoral College. Wisconsin hasn't voted for a Republican since 1984. Michigan and Pennsylvania haven't voted for a Republican since 1988. So Bernie Sanders would have won, but Democrats cheated Bernie. Now we have Trump. But the issue with Russia is this. The DNC has not given their servers to the FBI to analyze. In fact, the FBI asked for the DNC's computer servers. They were rejected. The CIA is only highly confident. They're not even 100% certain. The NSA is moderately confident. This is how these spy agencies speak. They are moderately confident. James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, said he said it with Chuck Todd on NBC a couple days ago. He has no evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia. Then there's the big issue of why Russia would want Trump over Clinton. The whole narrative is that they were so afraid of Clinton that they knew Bernie was being cheated. So they let everybody else in America know. And because we knew of the Democratic corruption, Hillary lost. That's the convoluted narrative. It's not, the Democratic Party isn't trying to fix the problem. They're trying to just say, okay, but Russia let us know how horrible we are. How dare them? How dare they do that? That's why Trump won. That's kind of in a nutshell. They're not certain about the Russia narrative. They're not. In the 13-page, there's a 13-page intelligence community report from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. It's 13 pages, and it tries to make the case for Russian hacking. It does not mention WikiLeaks once. It does not mention Julian Assange once. So they're using, it's really an example of fake news, because what they're using is a story that they don't even believe in the story.
But H.A., it sounds like, though, we're talking about a temper tantrum thrown by petulant children trying to explain to their funders why they lost and coming up with this fake narrative. But, isn't that selfish to throw the entire nation into this turmoil simply because you can't accept, or you're trying to make excuses and not take personal responsibility for your campaign loss?
That's exactly what it is. I agree with you 100%. They're a bunch of petulant children, and not only that. they are risking a renewed Cold War with the only country who has as many nuclear weapons as we do. And they would rather worsen relations with Russia, even though we have Syria going on, even though we had a 50-year Cold War. They would rather say that Russia is this big enemy of ours, and they cost Hillary the election. But here's an example of what they don't tell you. Whenever you hear people, so Donald Trump, he goes ahead and he makes, wild statements that are not true. But what he said regarding the uranium deal, yeah, Hillary Clinton wasn't paid by anyone to sign off on the uranium deal. But what took place was 20% of U.S. uranium capacity was sold to the Russian government, to Putin, to the Kremlin. And it was signed off by President Obama, by Hillary Clinton, and 8 other agencies. The question is why, and this is at a New York Times article, cash flowed to Clinton Foundation amid uranium deal. Why were there millions of dollars flowing to the Clinton Foundation while this deal was going down? That's the question that nobody wants to ask. And then, so in terms of ties to Russia, both Bill and Hillary, Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a Moscow speech. And do you know who reported that? The New York Times. So he got $500,000 for a Moscow speech. He's not a Russian stooge. But then the Russians hacked the election because they like Trump more. It just makes no sense.
I want to address what you just said, that's being put out there, that the Russians hacked the elections. But that's technically not true. I have not seen any reports that show any kind of electronic voting fraud. But when you say someone hacks the election, I would assume that's what you're talking about, but that's not what we're talking about, because I did pay attention to any reports. I don't know if you remember during the 2000 election of George W. Bush, the 2004 election of George W. Bush, and we did get a lot of reports of electronic vote flipping with these machines, black box voting as some activists call it. But that is not what has happened. That is not what they're alleging, but that is what they are insinuating by saying that the Russians hacked the elections. Would you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, yeah, the votes in Florida, for example, in 2000, that suddenly switched to Bush instead of Gore. Absolutely. But like you correctly stated, this election was not about the voters or vote changing or rigging votes. What took place, like you just stated perfectly, this is a Democratic Party blaming anything but Hillary Clinton, which is why I always focus on Hillary Clinton and the establishment Democrats, even more so than Trump, because the only people who are supposed to have saved us from Trump actually gave us Trump. We found out from the WikiLeaks Podesta emails that they said, Donald Trump is crazy, let's elevate him. And this way, it'll be the perfect rival for Hillary, because he's so crazy, Hillary will defeat him easily. And it didn't work out. So they gave, all that free airtime and trying to paint him as this insane person. It all backfired, and he won. But you're right, it has nothing to do with actual... The Democratic Party is not complaining about the changing of votes. And there are a lot of people who actually do make a case that there were foul practices or corruption in terms of voting. Votes. There are people who argue that votes did get changed. But see, that's not what the DNC is even talking about. They're just saying Russia influenced people, when in reality Hillary Clinton has been influencing people against her for years. So that's, to me, like you said, they're a bunch of petulant children. I tell you, I don't think this is. I think that this is going to blow up in their faces in terms of it's going to backfire, and people are going to find out that the narrative is just fear mongering, an excuse, and that's it. And already after losing to Trump and cheating Bernie, people are leaving the Democratic Party. I don't know how many people are going to leave because of this, debacle. So
I want to go back to something. Now, I know you talk to a lot of people because of the valuable coverage that you have been providing. So I don't hold it against you if you don't remember the time that I interviewed you on our radio program, Black Talk Radio News. But isn't it true that you have a military background like myself?
No, I do not. I don't have a military background. No, I worked in the State Department for a little bit, but no, I don't have a military background.
Okay, I may have you confused with another guest, but you do have experience in government, and you do seem to have some knowledge about how security clearances work. I did hold a top secret security clearance during my time in the military. Now, but in terms of these intelligence agencies, what I'm hearing from some people, even on radio, is that 17 intelligence agencies said that the Russians influenced the elections. The Russians are behind these hacks. And I appreciate that you do point out that the different agencies have different, I guess, classifications on how reliable their information is. And so is it incorrect for people to say that 17 intelligence agencies of the U.S. government are all in agreement that the Russians hacked the elections?
Well, absolutely. Scotty, let me ask you a question. If you put 17 people in a room, are they going to agree about anything? If you put 17 agencies with the bureaucracies and with all of those each bureaucratic chain of command is a little bit different for the CIA, the NSA, the FBI. In many cases, there's rivalries there. So absolutely, it's simply to say that they all agree, that doesn't mean anything because they're not even certain. If the CIA said we're 100% certain, that's one story. And the interesting that they don't, they say we're highly confident. The NSA is only moderately confident, but it's really interesting. When you get a chance, read the disclaimer on the 13-page intelligence community report from the FBI and DHS. The disclaimer literally says no warranties or guarantees.
Wow.
So they actually, even in their big report, where there's like this big bombshell report, they said, don't use this for any purposes, meaning they don't want to get sued by anybody. So they say, don't use this for anything other than just listening to our narrative. That's it.
But isn't it true that people are using it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're using it for their own purposes.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Let
me ask you this. What do you think is the end game of the Democrats here? Is the end game to have Vice President Pence installed as president, which of course that would mean the impeachment of Donald Trump, which I think is highly unlikely considering that the Republicans control both houses of Congress and obviously the presidency. So what do you think the end game? Do they think, I know they don't think that there's going to be a do-over of the 2016 elections. What are your thoughts on that?
No, you're 100% right about there's 240 Republicans in the House of Representatives. So you need the majority of the House and then 2/3 of the Senate, and they control both. So like you said, it's not going to happen in terms of impeachment. But the end game is simply this: throw enough mud, throw enough controversy, chaos, and the difference between this and Hillary Clinton's email scandal was the FBI was actually involved with a year-long criminal investigation that actually, it wasn't a question whether she used a private server. The CIA didn't have to be highly confident. She had that server. and they took her computer server in possession. So there was no question. The only issue was that they found she didn't intentionally do it, which of course she intentionally did. With this, they're trying to say, okay, you see, Trump has the same controversies. It's all the same. It's all relative. And, he's controversial too, and he has his scandals. So that evens out all the corruption within the Democratic Party. They're just trying to throw mud. The end game is to get people tired of Trump. But the problem, the Democrats don't understand this. Trump voters love him, really love him. I'm talking really love him. And they're loyal. The Democratic Party has a fracture. There are people very angry with the Democratic Party.
Well,
there
let's
are
talk
not
about
Republicans.
HA. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's talk about why some Democrats, progressives, and people who lean Democrats towards the Democratic Party are angry, and what's the cause of this fracture? Because HA, I produced a podcast a couple of days ago. It may have been a video, but it was a video where I showed on screen an article from January the 16th of 2016, January of 2016, I think it was from The Guardian, that showed that this McCarthyism started during the Democratic primaries and Bernie Sanders was the target.
Well, that's interestingly enough, Bernie and Jill Stein. Bernie went to, visited Russia on a vacation, the Soviet Union on a vacation. Jill Stein sat at a table with Vladimir Putin, and the guilt. It's really interesting. The guilt by association only works one way. So with the Democrats, if they don't like you, then oh my God, you sat at a table with Putin. But signing off on 20% of U.S. uranium, that's okay. You know, getting half a million dollars for a speech in a Kremlin bank linked to Putin. Oh, Bill Clinton. We don't talk about that. So I mean, you're 100% right. This started. They, unfortunately, this is a fear tactic that's working. The sad part is that Democrats are using this, and it's working like a charm for their purposes. I don't think it's going to, help defeat Trump. I think this only strengthens Trump. I don't think it's going to help win back Congress. I think it hurts Democrats in 2018. But in terms of what they're doing, getting the money back, they're going to get a lot of money from donors because of this. Because there's a lot of people who truly feel that Russia gave the election to Trump. There's a lot of very wealthy people and very big, corporations or whatever, and they say, we might have made a mistake the first time, but we're not going to make a mistake the second time. We're going to give maybe even more money. So that in terms of raising money, it's working. In terms of, actually defeating Trump, it plays into his favor.
But wait a minute, we're talking about these big money donors, but isn't it Democrats and liberals and progressives who say we need to get big money out of politics? I mean, I get emails from certain groups where they want to amend the Constitution to prevent unlimited funds coming from these billionaires. So aren't they being a little hypocritical here?
Well, very much so. But you know what's happening is there are progressives within the Democratic Party, like Samuel Ronan in the DNC, or Keith Ellison also. But Samuel Ronan wanted to completely do what Bernie did, and Jill Stein, take corporate money out of politics. Instead, the DNC elected Tom Perez, which is basically a green light to get all the corporate money they can. The Democratic Party doesn't. This is why I go against them even more than Trump. I don't like Trump, but the only way to defeat Donald Trump is to defeat the Democratic Party. I wrote an article about that in the Huffington Post. And the reason is because you have progressives, like you said, who want to get money out of politics. But the Democratic Party does not, and actually will fight to keep corporate money. They'll fight and they will steamroll anyone who says get corporate money out. And it's that they would rather lose than not get all that money, because I actually do think that it trickles down to them profiting in some way. Maybe not overtly, but there's so much money. I mean, $1.2 billion.
Sort of like the Clinton Foundation.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, Clinton like Foundation. The Clinton exactly. Foundation.
I mean, $10 billion in Haiti. $10 billion. I mean, my God, that's a lot of money. And only something like less than 1% is accounted for.
Wow.
So, I mean, where's the money going? somebody's got to be pocketing or profiting or holding that money somehow. So
you mentioned you mentioned Keith Ellison and Tom Perez. As we know, the DNC elected Tom Perez. I think it was not this past weekend, but the weekend prior. They elected him after much lobbying from what some people would say the Clinton-Obama wing of the Democratic Party. They were successful in getting Tom Perez that position. But I was pretty disgusted, HA, by some of the news coverage, particularly CNN, where I saw as a smear job on Keith Ellison trying to portray him as anti-Semitism. But I also saw what I will call anti-Islamic bigotry also playing out in this race for the DNC chairman. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you on that. I do not think that Keith Ellison is anti-Semitic at all. I don't think that at all. I also agree with you that there was, let's put it this way, I'm not going to accuse, I can't accuse anyone in the DNC of being racist or Islamophobic, but I will say this. When Keith Ellison was gaining steam, suddenly Tom Perez came out and said, oh, I'm running. And I don't think, I just don't think the DNC wanted Keith Ellison. I think that the fact that he was Muslim was a big issue. But that's just my view. Look, when you look,
let me clarify, HA. Sorry to interrupt you again. Yeah, I wasn't talking about the DNC, but I was talking about news coverage portraying him as anti-Semitic. And then I'm like, okay, if he's so anti-Semitic, why would he be one of the top surrogates for Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish?
Exactly. No, look, it's, first of all, that was a big smear campaign. He's not anti-Semitic. Simply critiquing Israel doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic at all. Number one. Number two, it's like this. The media is going to do exactly what the Democratic National Committee or the Democratic establishment wants at all times. There's the majority of, you could say, liberal or mainstream media is practically, in many ways, controlled by the Democratic Party. Any narrative they want, if they want to say that Bernie is crazy or Jill Stein is unrealistic or Keith Ellison is, anti-Semite or whatever they want to portray, if they want to say Hillary is the best choice to beat Trump, whatever, or Russia stole it, any story, narrative, they're going to push that. And we've seen the collusion. We had, New York Times writers giving Podesta, that was a political writer who now works at the New York Times. He gave John Podesta an article pre-publication to edit. So, you're 100% right. This is a machine. I call it the machine. And the machine is not working definitely not working for progressive values. It's working for gaining money and certain ideals, and that's it. Definitely, pro-choice, certain in terms of the environment, here and there, things that people can rally around, not controversial things. So they'll never talk about ending perpetual counterinsurgency wars. They're not going to talk about the prison-industrial complex. They're not going to talk about the military-industrial complex. They're not going to talk about controversial things because, of course, that hurts, fundraising and all that. So.
Now, the last thing I would like to get your commentary on, WikiLeaks just published Vault 7, which reveals a hacking program at the CIA and also revealed some of the tools that they have developed to carry out that hacking. Now, also going back to the massive surveillance program of the NSA that Edward Snowden revealed, and now we hear about this hacking program through the CIA, I would think with all of that capability that if there really was a smoking gun to show a collusion between the Russians and members of the Trump campaign, that they would have it and that they would then be certain of these things, and not only moderately, confident or highly confident. They will be certain, and they pull out that smoking gun. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you, that is a brilliant observation, and that's something I'm definitely going to use on my YouTube channel in my writing. I never actually thought of it in those exact terms, but you're 100% right. If they have the capacity, the capabilities to hack your TV or your car or any other, all the other revelations from WikiLeaks Vault 7, my God, you're right. They should be 150% certain that Russia hacked the election to help Trump. But like you said, they're moderately confident, NSA highly confident. And I mean, that's a great point. It just kind of highlights the fact that they're full of baloney, that they're just going ahead and, perpetuating a new McCarthyism only to suit their own interests.
Well, thank you for joining us today, H.A. Will you again tell people how they can subscribe to your YouTube channel, the address, and also your website?
Well, thank you so much, Scotty. It was a great pleasure. And it's counterpropa.com. And my YouTube channel is H.A. Goodman. You just type in H.A. Goodman, you get my YouTube channel. And yeah, this was great, and I really appreciate being on.
You have a great day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.